All right. Before we get started for today, any questions? Okay. I got to thinking about today's lecture, and I had a question. You guys remember how on Monday you kind of flipped over the pages and I asked you to write down 2 things that you learned, and then if anybody had any questions. Didn't see a whole lot of questions, but one of the questions that I did get, it was about this negative feedback. And so that was the point that we left off on Monday. So I figured one of the things, I didn't know if everybody would have the study guide printed off and, with you here today. So that's why I've handed you a copy of the study guide. Now, what we're going to do, because one of the things about the study guide, if you remember, it's going to be one of your best tools to be used for studying, okay? So let's pick up at that point where we left off, which is this negative feedback. One of the reasons that negative feedback is what controls the body, and you tend to think of negative as being bad, all right, positive being good. You got to remember that with this particular topic, we've also got to learn to think outside the box. So one of the things that we're going to find is, in our case for this, negative is good. Because negative kind of means no, stop, whatever the case might be. And in order for the body to maintain homeostasis, if a value, meaning something within our systems, such as temperature, pH, oxygen levels, CO2 levels, electrolytes, whatever the case might be, if they do not stay within a normal range, the body has to say, no, we have to go back to normal. That's why negative feedback is going to be what controls the body, what keeps it in homeostasis, I should say. Does that make sense? Sort of like what we mentioned on Monday, the body temperature. Normal temperature, they tell us, 98.6. But we don't always stay at 98.6. If it goes too high, the body says, whoo, sweat. If it goes too low, the body says, warm up. So negative feedback is what says, no, stop the bad behavior or whatever's making it not stay in that homeostasis and go back to normal. But positive feedback, when something is positive, we go, oh, that's a good activity, that's a good idea. Let's try that again, or let's do that again. Maybe try something different. Positive feedback feeds the cycle. It makes something continue. And in the body, for the most part, positive feedback is bad. So, the being able to maintain the homeostasis of the body is going to be dependent on negative feedback. So, when we talk about a feedback system as a whole, we're talking about, we mentioned that there are components that have to be present. We need a receptor. For example, the nerve endings in our skin that can pick up information, okay, like the heat and the cold. We can have a receptor on internal organs that pick up information and adjust their activities. So we can have receptors, nerve endings, our special senses. These are all different types of receptors. They take information that is sent to them to their control center. And yes, for the most part, that is going to be an area within the brain or the brain stem. So we'll have our control center that takes that information, integrates it, and says, now here's the response. For example, those of you who were here before and as I was getting started, the lights had the lights on full blast. And then, of course, this light up here coming off the LED, it's really, really bright, okay? And so for me, those of you who were here when we got started, what did you notice I did with the lights here? I cut them down, okay? Because, you know, that light's really bright already on the screen, and this was making it just seem too bright. In that type of situation, what's the size of your pupils? Are they large or are they small? They're small, okay? Do you happen to know why? We're trying to control that amount of light because have you ever walked from, say, a dark room into a really bright room and actually it hurt? You're going, oh, hold up, whoa, okay, hold up, and you're doing this number, okay? That's because the receptors for the light, okay, that are controlling the size of your pupils, it's actually such a fast reaction that's taking place, it's causing pain because of they're trying to adjust. There's other things in the eyes too, but that's an example of how we're trying to control that amount of light coming in. So feedback systems, definitely important. The body most definitely is dependent upon these feedback systems. One that we can look at as negative feedback, if we think about our blood pressure, all right? Do you know anyone who may have blood pressure problems? Like anyone in your family? Okay. And sometimes, or a lot of times, they may have to take medications, that sort of thing. But our blood pressure as a whole, okay, blood pressure in our body, all right, is that something that stays constant? Does your blood pressure stay the same all the time? No. No, okay? Because now, what we'll learn as we go through anatomy and physiology, blood pressure, heartbeat, amount of blood, that sort of thing, it is going to work so that it can meet the demands of the body. So if you have a very physical activity that you're doing, when you stand up and go on break or leave class, when you get up in the morning, going from a lying position to an upright position, the body has to meet those demands, okay? And sometimes that's going to end up being a situation where the activity is much faster than what the heart can keep up with, and when you go to stand up, you kind of get that, ooh, whoa, kind of feeling, all right? So we have in our body the ability through negative feedback to help this system meet the demands placed upon it. And it's done by negative feedback. So if we think back to components needed, and what are the 3 components that are needed?
Effector.
Kevin?
Effector, control center, and
A receptor, our control center, and the effector. So let's check and see if we've got that here. Receptors. So if we come over here, we have receptors, which I think in this case, for this system, this is really cool, okay? And you're gonna, when you go into part 2 of A and P, and you get into the cardiovascular system, and you begin to learn about the aorta, the vessels of the body, you'll understand why these receptors are so close to the ejection of blood out of the heart. So you will see that we have receptors. They're located right here in the aorta, okay? And they're going to be able to measure blood pressure. So those receptors monitor our variable, the blood pressure, and information. Now they're trying to kind of show the information and which way it goes. Information will be sent to the control center, like I just mentioned a few minutes ago. Control center is going to be where? This time, brainstem, and the 2 areas that's going to monitor information will be either the brain or the brainstem. Okay? So, in this case, we're going to have a control center in our brainstem, and that information is going to be integrated, understood, okay, integrated, and create an effect. That's why it's called sending it to an effector. Did anybody notice that in the terminology? Because you know that word, effect, affect? Do you always know how to use it correctly? Sometimes, as you're sitting there reading something, writing something, whatever the case might be, and you're going, is it effect or affect? This time, think of it this way. We need an effect. We need something to occur. And that's why it's called an effector, because it carries out the effect. So the control center sends that information. We're going to see that the response is going to get carried out because we're trying to maintain homeostasis. So the information is going to be sent back to an area that can help control the effect and therefore